before we can get a 3D model into Illustrator, all we have to do is this one super simple command, and you'll see it in my layers already over here. Make 2D is the command. So what I do is I will usually just like draw my window first, whatever I'm gonna like bring along with me into Illustrator. It's just a good way to be able to like fill in your background. When we get to Illustrator, we're going to do like some kind of color, or possibly you might do like a gradient or other things in the background. So having a pre-drawn square can make things easier. I'm just going to select everything that I have here, make 2D, hit OK or hit Enter. And then before you hit OK over here, you just want to like make sure. So it should be the view that we're in, the top view. So if you picked one of these other ones, it would not be using the view that we're currently in. And then maintain source layers is helpful. Scene silhouette isn't really that necessary. So a lot of times I won't use that, but if you're doing something really simple, a lot of times it can be really helpful. So just to see what it looks like, we'll leave it on. And then we just hit OK. And it's going to make a complete 2D drawing out of what we just had designed as a 3D object. So that's what it did. So this is the same as our view here, and it literally just like takes all of that geometry and projects it onto the C plane. And it'll always move it over here towards the origin somewhere. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go to top view. An important thing to remember, these types of drawings, there is scale built into this. So you can always like double check, because like I was zoomed in more before and I scaled this thing, and I just wanted to be able to see it. So I don't know that the scale is accurate, but what you can do is you can pay attention to what we talked about today in lecture and reference that and understand which things might be foreshortened and which things aren't foreshortened. And then you can scale your drawing accordingly if we're concerned about scale drawings or not. So for right now, I'm just going to type export selected, or select from the drop-down export selected. And you're just going to export this as an Illustrator file. And then we're just going to take that over to Illustrator and open this up. Okay, so here I am in Illustrator. I just opened this file up, and I have that rectangle that I was talking about, or the square that I drew that was over in Rhino. And if you don't have that, you're going to want that because you might want to put a background in here. So just use the rectangle tool if you haven't done so already. And then the first thing we need to do is talk about bringing in those swatches. So if you go onto Carmen and check the files page, you can find this file called Knowlton Rep 2020.ase. So all you need to do to be able to open that is make sure that you have this swatches tab here. And if you don't have it, just go into Window and then look for the swatches here, and that'll open it up. And then you can just click this little icon here, and then you'll do Open Swatch Library, Other Library, and it's just going to open up your File Explorer. And you just want to find that ASE file in your downloads or wherever it is. And once you have that open, it's just gonna, or once you click open, it's just gonna bring it over here as this like floating tab, most likely. So a few things that you can do right now is you can click these little folder icons, and that's just going to like bring any of these little folders, like this list of swatches down here. So if you click that one or this one, it'll populate, and then you can also drag this by the little blank dark gray area and like insert it in here too. So I find it's easy to like not see all of them at the same time if I know which ones I want. But so basically you can set up your colors over here, and then you just want to make sure that you have fill selected for right now. And then you want to look for this icon. You might not have the live paint bucket icon showing when you click here. You might have this shape builder tool or something, but if you can't find it, it's a good idea to look for it. But you can also hit the letter K. But so before we can actually do that, we need to select everything. And then I'm just going to hit the letter K. And then I'm just going to pick some of these colors here. And I'm just going to click in this blank space, and that's just going to automatically make my background color. And then I can zoom in and find these spots that I want to start colorizing. So basically what Live Paint does is it's like a really intelligent tool that looks at all of the lines, all of the vectors that you have in Illustrator and just identifies regions. And then you're able to just like fill these areas with paint super easily. You don't have to like worry about all the stuff we worried about before with the layer organization. But the caveat to that is that this works great on this like small house, which like this is a fairly complicated house, but it is still like a small file. When you start getting like super duper detailed, like say it's like a skyscraper that you're working on, and you have all these like different hatch patterns that you brought out of Rhino. If you go to Live Paint everything and you select everything at the same time, you're going to crash your computer. So that's when you might want to like control these layers, turn some of the layers off, and then that way you can live paint just the stuff that's being shown, and then you're able to bring that other stuff back without messing with it. So yeah, but yeah, so live paint, like I said, it just fills things in. After you get like a few colors around, what I can show you is just that like what it also does is that it like kind of turns everything into one group. So at times that can be an issue if you're still trying to edit things, but I can show you a quick way to get around that. So I just clicked back over to my selection tool, which you can also hit the letter V, and like select out of that. What you can do is you can right click, and I guess I still need the live paint tool selected, but yeah, so then you can do expand, and then you can also use ungroup, and that'll kind of make things a little bit less rigid for you. And now you can get these things separately, but also another thing is like if you have some stuff that's still kind of grouped together, or it's at whatever stage that it's in, there's two different types of selection tools. There's the direct and there's the regular. So the direct selection tool will pretty much let you grab more specific things that you're after when the regular selection tool isn't going to. So yeah, that's really it for this video. So enjoy the short video, but yeah, basically Live Paint is going to help you tremendously. So play around with it, try to become good at it, watch some other tutorials, but it's really simple when you're dealing with all your layers being visible and not that large of a model. But again, just watch out when you start to get really big models, because your computer will crash, because that's happened to me before. One of the things that I've noticed is that like basically when you use Live Paint, how it kind of groups everything and like traps everything together, it can kind of be a little bit finicky to deal with, like, how do I edit these curves now? How do I change these line weights? Because they're all kind of locked in. So like what I ended up doing, because I just think this is like the fastest way to do it, is I actually have two files. And like basically I set up the first file, and it's it's just like everything saved. You like make the artboard, you do whatever, and then you save it at that point. Um, and then you also save as, and you can end up with like a duplicated file where everything's in the same place. You have kind of that archive file where you can like find those lines if you end up deleting them or something like that, or if you live paint it and now you are just like, oh well, I just want to mess um, with these line weights and everything, and I don't feel like having to constantly click in and out of this live paint, which by the way, you just double click. But so you can like double click and you can edit the live paint. You can, grab your paint bucket, and it's really easy to do these kinds of things. And you can expand this, and you can get it back into a state where it's a little bit easier to edit things. And you can also like go in here and pick these lines, and you can, change the line weight. And that's pretty easy to do, but it can be kind of tedious. And I like to just like, I already know what line weight I'm going to use for like 90% of the stuff that I have. So um, basically, what you end up with is you can just end up in a place where you have all of that live paint on just one layer. And then when you don't feel like using that and you just want to edit the line weights, you can just turn that off. And then so I have this like duplicate file that has all of my layers, and they're all named and organized, so I can find like the mullion and the trim and the interior walls and all this stuff, and I can make my life a little bit easier. Which I didn't take these extra steps, but what I highly recommend doing is like go through after you've made everything in Rhino and like start refining the line work while it's still 2D, but before you take it into Illustrator, because like you'll find some weird things. Like I have this curve here. Literally, there's no reason for that to exist. I don't uh I don't know why it's there. If I could see it in if I could see it in Rhino, I'd probably be able to figure out what that is. But there's just some weird piece there. So like you can just come in and clean these things up. And like Make 2D sometimes struggles with pieces that are. Let's see, this is the kind of other frustrating thing too. So this is the regular selection tool, and this is the direct selection tool. So I just clicked onto this tinier curve, and now it's going to actually let me delete that. And you can like click onto the points. You can also like click the end point of a curve that you want to manipulate, which, mind you, this is also why like, so if you have all of your layers and they should all be organized, and you should have colored those layers, and that way like when everything shows up, it's not all black. But the thing is that now it's like the layer itself wants to highlight the color that it learned from Rhino, but it also generated the line weights that way. So like you can see how like I'm having a hard time being able to pick this, and like I can't see which thing is selected, right? So that's why you also just want to like change all of this to black or change it all to white, and then like I'll make the line weight really fine. Or sometimes I'll also use the command, which is Control Y or Command Y if you're on a Mac, and then it just like turns all the lines into like super fine lines. Um, so then you can use this direct selection tool, and you can like delete little bits that don't need to be there. Like that was just a point. I think it was a point along this vector here, but like it didn't need to have that extra point along its line, and like for some reason that's not connected. So like you can just use the direct selection tool and like hold shift to move orthogonally, kind of the same way that Rhino works. But you can also see like something's kind of weird about the way that these intersections are created. So these are all things that could be fixed in, seconds in Rhino, but you just can't really, you don't want to waste the time to like have to fix every single curve once you're in Illustrator, because you have commands in Rhino that, you know, like trim and join and extend and all that stuff that would make this easier. But so to skip along this a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I have this other file that's all my lines, and you could always just like re-export this from Rhino, and you'd have to play around with like, as long as you didn't have to scale everything, then you just have to worry about lining this up. But the really convenient thing is by making a file that is like, I saved this one, and then I like changed the artboard, um, and then like I hadn't changed the artboard all the way on this one, but I did have that rectangle already drawn. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna select all these layers, and then I'm gonna select select everything with Control A, and then I'm gonna go over here, and I'm going to click this in my Layers tab. I'm gonna click this 3-line menu here, and now there is this one button that we're looking for, which is Paste Remembers Layer. So that should be checked. And so if I paste everything from here, which has all my layer organization, over to here, which has no layer organization except for this one giant one, it'll actually remember these things. And then what you can also do is you can go to Edit, and then you can go to Paste in Place. And so it literally just dropped all these lines on top of this exactly where everything belongs. You can see everything's already lining up. And so then I just like locked my my paint, my live paint layer, and now I can just do Control A once again, and I'll be able to select everything. You don't actually have to have all the layers selected. It's not like Rhino. So, but yeah. So now I'm just going to pick like a fine line weight, and then I'll just go with the white lines for right now, with all of them at 0.25, just so that way like everything's like fine detail visibility, and then I can like go through and one by one start editing these. So like the scene silhouette of the shell or the slab or something might be something that I set up. But like once again, like you could set this up way better in Rhino, where you have, one line that's, maybe it's a 1 point line weight that is like the outside outline of the entire silhouette of this building, and you could have all of these little like detail like this, this is the same color. Why should this be, a bold line? It shouldn't be a bold line. So you but this one is like actually the corner of something, so maybe that should be like a 0.5 line weight. And then you can go through and be strategic and like make that a 0.5 line weight or a 0.75. But yeah, so you just can go through here and have that layer management set up for you super easily, just by like being organized in Rhino, and then just like pasting, so just paste in place in Illustrator, and that'll paste it like where it belongs. But that's assuming that between this file and this file that they are in fact in the same place. So it's like if you moved this around, if you change where that border is, it's going to be different. So you just need to keep track of that, and make that new save state at the right point. Which also brings me to moments like this where you can see, I think I have Control Y hit. So if you see how I have all these lines and they're going off the page, and like my artboard isn't lining up, and I might have like 4 artboards or something like that, and I'm gonna like shuffle those artboards around and get the line work to match up with it. So when you're in that situation, if you don't have these layers locked, and then you click on this artboard tool, which, mind you, can like double click, and that lets me edit the size of the artboard, and hitting Control R lets me change the units around the artboard very easily. Now you can see that's inches. It was previously, I forgot that. Basically, if you you can't do Control Z to like undo that. You have to just change it back. But so it'll be in like one of these other units like pixels, points, or picas or something. But so anyway, if you click that and then you want to move your artboard, which like you have to click out of it sometimes and click back into it, and then you want to move your artboard, you may find that it's like not taking the lines correctly. So you see how like this stuff used to be over here. Control Z twice. It's like everything that was like the entirety of the line was off of my artboard. When I move it, it stays where it was. So if you want to move your artboard and not mess up your lines, you want to like lock all the layers, and then you can move the artboard, and any hidden or locked objects in the artboards will not be moved. So now you can see that's there. And now I can select, I can like unlock all these things, click and drag, and then like move this back to where it belongs. Line that up with the artboard. So that's a pretty easy one. So to go back to dealing with this live painted thing that I've got here, basically double clicking into the live paint lets you begin to like edit things in that live paint, and you can like click these lines. Like if you like, and this is just, it's not expanded or anything, it's just I'm just editing the live paint and it's double clicked into it. You see that it kind of changed the way that it's showing everything. It's just telling me that I'm like inside the live paint alone. And if you find like weird moments where basically you want to be able to like connect these lines together or separate them more, like moments like this whole thing, it's like very shallow to the wall. Like I had it come off of like maybe a 16th of an inch or an eighth of an inch or something, or like a quarter of an inch. But so live paint, it does recognize that, but for some reason also Rhino or the exporting process kind of got a little confused, and it's showing me like edges that are actually like the bottom face that I shouldn't be seeing. So all you do is you just use the regular selection tool, and you can just select these things and delete them. And then like you just gotta find where they are and be careful that you're selecting the right line. Like that would delete this whole piece for some reason. And this would just delete that little triangle that I don't need. And then that's one more thing I want to talk about while I'm talking about clicking on points, is you also have the direct selection tool, which is the filled in cursor or arrow. And so you can see that it kind of behaves the same way as this one does. If you like select something and you drag it, it all moves, right? But so the real way to use, like if like I had everything selected, so that's why everything was moving. But if I select this line, everything moves because I have the regular selection tool. If I select this point, doesn't matter, everything still moves. But I can select endpoints and midpoints by using this direct selection tool. So if you find that things are a little bit weird, you just need to like, you can't just like click and drag. You have to click specifically onto that line. So you'll see that like this one's filled. That one is actually white. I don't know if that's going to be able to show up in the video, but this point down here is like a white fill on the inside of that dot, and this one is not. And now I can drag from the point and like edit things to that line specifically, which brings me to one other thing, which hopefully it's happening right now. It's kind of, this is like one of the things that Illustrator is kind of weird about, but you can see it is actually like snapping there. So if you guys don't have object snaps happening right now, then there are object snaps, and you just go to view, and then it's in here. Just you should have snap to point. Those should be on. These other ones, I don't think you'd want to snap to the grid or to the pixel most of the time. If you're like lining stuff up, I could see you might want to snap to the grid, like when you're laying out boards or when you have like many images or many drawings laid out on a board, and then you like create these like guides, these grids. Um, then you can start to use snap to grid. But uh, for right now, it's just you want to see your like cursor go from black to white, and it's very particular about you have to be in like just the right spot. But yeah, so that's object snaps in Illustrator. They do exist. Um, and so like just like I was saying about using the paste in place, if you aren't able to do that, then you can use the object snaps and like select everything all at the same time, and then use that object snap to like get the the old line work that's not in the right place to line up with the new line work. And then you can also do the same thing when you're like scaling. Um, and the one other thing is like if you select a curve like this, there's also this show bounding box, and so that gives me this like box that like goes around it. So if I like use the points of that box and I try to drag them, it's like it scales. And this is like especially confusing with like rectangles. So like I just drew this rectangle and there's like these points here that I can grab and they'll scale it. But that's because what you're doing is you're grabbing this thing called the bounding box. So if you hide the bounding box, now I can actually click these points and I can drag from those points and it just moves things. And if I want to drag this onto that point, I can see my cursor turn white. And now I know it snapped. And so those should line up. And then if you're want to be ultra certain, you can hit Control Y, like I was talking about, and now you'll see that's like dead on. So the object snaps are working. But yeah, so just like knowing when to use the bounding box and making sure that your object snaps are on, and knowing when to turn that bounding box off, uh, those will be ultra useful for you guys. Um, and then like I said, there are ways you can edit things within this. You can either edit the lines and like have it as like a separate series of layers, um, and that way you can like control everything on the layer. You could, if you draw your windows in glass, like see, the way that I had done this like curves glass layer isn't the right way to have done this. Like basically, I select everything, and it's like selecting a bit too much. We don't want it to do that. Um, I should have the glass layer should only be like the rectangle inside of this window that I want to make. Like if I was trying to make like a separate color infill for where my glass was, I would just make sure that before I leave Rhino that those glass curves are exactly where I want them to be. They're just on the inside of that. And edit that stuff before you bring it over here. Um, and then like just as well, you may also want to like click into, which I had the live paint on, so that was also selecting more stuff than I wanted. So let me hit Control again. Yeah, so now this does seem right. So yeah, there's my glass layer, but it's only giving me those two lines right there, and then another two lines, and another two lines, and another two lines. So if I were to turn on an infill, I'm not getting anything. And if I were to come in here and try to find where these lines are and do join, I only get that triangle. So that's why in Rhino you want to like know ahead of time that you're going to infill those windows, and then make sure that it's a joined quadrilateral or whatever it needs to be, to make the right shape that you need. Um, And then, yeah, so that way you can just come through here and you can just select everything that's on the layers that you need. And you can change those line weights to whatever you want them to be, or take them all the way down, and you don't waste any time.